Well, our special guest on Left, Right and Centre tonight is author Chetan Bhagat, who is out with, believe it or not, his 10th book. This one is called The Girl in Room 105, and Chetan is now here in the studio with us, just ahead actually of the book's formal release. This book is actually quite different from the novels you're used to reading by Chetan Bhagat. It's not a typical love story that one sees Chetan writing. And in fact, Chetan Bhagat, it says it's actually an unloved story here on the cover. What does that mean?
Well, I think, I like to come up with terms which society needs but are not there, like half girlfriend or two states. And I think this time the word is unlove because we often celebrate love. We often tell you must fall in love, all the marketing is around love. But sometimes when love ends, when a relationship ends, people don't know how to handle it. It can take a long time to get over a breakup. And that often happens to young people when they're young and in a very crucial stage of their career. And I find it hard to unlove also. And I think if you are in a situation, you had a bad breakup or bad relationship ending, it can knock a year or two out of your life when you should be focused on your career. So I think it's equally important to celebrate, not celebrate, but learn how to unlove. I myself am guilty of propagating love in my stories before, but I think it's also time now to find out about a guy who couldn't get the girl and how he, went on unloving and how, because we have an unfollow generation, it's easy to unfollow someone on Instagram, unfriend, unfollow, but it's not easy to unlove.
So you're kind of addressing this to this new generation.
Yes.
That's, as you have said somewhere, a generation that finds it perhaps harder to stay in relationships longer.
Yeah, I think attention spans are falling. Technology is making it easier for you to cut off from one person to the next. We were discussing earlier, there's a term now called ghosting. People don't even formally give closure anymore when relationships end. Sometimes you just ghost. The thing you have to do is stop replying to messages till the other person gets the message. I think it's harsh, it's horrible, but that's...
And just bad manners. Actually.
It's just really bad manners. That's not how we were brought up. It was rude to not respond. But apparently, the new generation sees that as a more painless way. Like without confrontation, you just... But I think somewhere down the line, it also takes away something about relationship, which is very essence of it, that people are becoming a little more distant because of technology and finding like, okay, I'll just stop messaging them and I'll be okay. But that doesn't work. Another
interesting aspect of your book, though, is that it has a Kashmir connection.
Yeah, the girl is Kashmiri Muslim.
The girl's a Kashmiri Muslim, and the boy has a father who was in the RSS.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in these times of love jihad, I found this theme that you chose particularly interesting. Why did you do that?
See, I've always, even though I write popular fiction, I've always tried to have some social aspect, some social backdrop to the book. Two states was north-south. Kaipuche was about, Gujarat riots. I feel Kashmir is highly misunderstood. You are probably a bigger expert than me on Kashmir, but what I think is the average student or youngster in Jaipur or Bikaner, they don't care about Kashmir because all they hear is either that there's a lot of terrorism there or there's army there. They don't understand the story of an average Kashmiri youth, where all they care about is why did my internet go off? Why am I not getting data? Or why aren't there movie theaters? Why can't I get a job in my city? I mean, these are aspects which I think need to be known. And because I have a wide reach, in every city people are going to be reading this book, they'll know more about the Kashmir problem. They'll know more about what people are going through there. An average person.
You're saying that it's only the sort of extreme voices
Extreme, they're getting the limelight, right? By definition, they get the stage. Either it's like the pro-army people or the pro-militancy people, and it looks like in Kashmir nothing else is happening. That's all people are doing every day, pelting stones.
That is a fair point that you make.
Yeah, so I think I wanted to show this. It is a Kashmiri Muslim girl, but she's doing a PhD at an IIT, and I think when
so you're trying to move away from the stereotypes of Kashmiris in that sense.
And the story is partly set in Kashmir where they go around and the protagonist trying to solve a case, but he meets locals and the locals talk about, while the internet has been shut down again.
But can I ask you, because Chetan, I believe you also spent some time in your childhood in Kashmir, right?
Yes, my father was in the army, so...
So you have that link. So, I mean, who do you think today is responsible, or let me put it this way, do you think the mainstream media is also responsible for the caricature of Kashmiris today, and how they are presented to the rest of India?
Yeah.
And especially when they're kind of vilified on some news channels night after night. I mean, as someone who has at least made an attempt to try and understand, would you say that that's been very unfair?
I think so. See, I mean, there's a line also in the book. The father says, you know, these Kashmiri people, they are so ungrateful. Our army protects them, and they are like pelting stones at them. And the boy who I've shown as somebody who's politically naive, but he's just a good person. He says, I'm sure, Dad, it's not as simple as somebody just being ungrateful. There must be more to it. And I think all sides have cut off dialogues with normal people, like people who don't have, like people who are not living their life for an ideology, people who are living their life to build their resume or get a college or get a job. We haven't heard them enough. And I think certain problems, there is a market in keeping them alive. The Kashmir is a great example of that. Ram Mandir is another one. We just don't want to solve it because every side has an incentive to keep it going. Israel, Palestine is another one. It is not an easy problem to solve, but it is not unsolvable. And I think we have somehow made it out to be like, you know, let's not solve it. Let's show that I am right, I am right, I am right. It has to be there has to be a dialogue. There has to be a way out. Experts have to put their hand up and say, we tried for 30 years attending conferences on Kashmir and we haven't been able to solve it. Let's try something new now.
But so let me ask you, because when you talked about how sort of the extreme voices are the only ones that get heard, that's actually true of everything that's happening in India today, right? Politically, you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, you see the binaries that are there for everything. It's either black or it's white, right?
And
or
I suffer every day, and the black hits me and the white hits me. But let me
ask you about that. I mean, because you're very much a political commentator, you're very much someone who's not been afraid to express your opinion. You often get trolled for that. How do you look at the binaries that, you know, we've reduced ourselves to, whether it's in the online space or otherwise?
Yeah, I think it's very dangerous. I'll just come to that. Just finishing on the Kashmir point, I also want to tell you how this book came about. Why I'm writing about Kashmir, you asked me. I once was invited to be a panel for MBA entrance interviews, and these two boys came. Very handsome boys, and I had their resume and they said, so we are from Kashmir. And I was just scanning their resume, just nothing, like a few seconds of silence. And they said, so, but we are not terrorists. They were not being sarcastic. They were not being funny.
It was genuine.
It was genuine, and they was not even being victims. They were just like, just to let you know, I'm not. Yeah. I said, like, why did you say that? And he said, sir, because that's my nickname in college. That stayed with me. Like, he had nothing to do with the Kashmir problem. He probably didn't even understand it, but because he was Muslim and from Kashmir, the nickname is terrorist. Where is your AK-47? I mean, I know this sounds harsh, but that's what people go through. And I thought, who will talk about them? You know, do they not deserve to be heard? So that's how this came about. And speaking of extremes on Twitter, I think it's really sad what the world is becoming. What is also sad is certain things were absolutes. You know, like what is some terrible things which go against basic human values were never encouraged. Now, let's say I'm somebody, like somebody is out there who says that girls shouldn't dress like this. Clearly it was looked down upon, but he will find 500 people on Twitter who feel the same way. And he'll feel empowered. He'll say, well, I'm not the only one. I have 500 people. We keep messaging each other all day on our WhatsApp group or on our Twitter timeline saying why girls shouldn't dress up like this. So they feel empowered. They feel they have a legitimate point of view. And so some very unsavory point of views are getting legitimacy because of this mob mentality of Twitter. We have a special danger in India. Our country is a place where the culture changes every 100 kilometers. Language changes, religion changes, something will change. India, we cannot take secularism for granted. We have to work at it. We have to keep on reminding people, stay together, because we are different. We are not homogeneous.
Is there a danger to that today?
Yeah, because of social media is one of the dangers that we must, like, you know, it's become so easy to become your little mercury, like, you know how the mercury separates into separate droplets. It's very easy to get divided today on social media. So we need to make an extra effort to be secular. And I think right now, say, India is not as secular as it should be. It's still a dangerous situation.
That's interesting you say that, because that's a comment certainly about the political climate as well then. So, I mean, tell me more about that and why you feel that. Because, you know, you started out in 2014 and people keep reminding you of that on Twitter, that as someone who really admired the BJP and Mr. Modi in particular, and one saw over a period of time that you did speak out when you felt things were not going right, whether it was on the economy, on the budget, etc. So, when you say today that we are not as secular as we should be, why is that, you think, happening?
Okay. Well, yeah, and on that point that in 2014, I think you have to see things in context. You hire someone at NDTV, you may hire them, you may shake hands with them and say, welcome to NDTV, I think you are really bright. Now, if they start working here and they're not doing something right, you will say, what are you doing? This is not right. Now, that doesn't mean I call you, but you hired me, but you were my supporter. You know, both the things can happen at the same time. We were facing a government that was facing a lot of charges of corruption and arrogance and of not listening to people. People were literally on the road at that time. So, I think we could have tried a change, and we had an alternative, a man with a plan, and I think we did. But once they come into power, they will be judged differently. They will be judged on their performance. So, this government has done a few things right, and even if I say they have not particularly gone and polarized things, even if we were to, because we have no proof of that. But like I said, our country is such that we need regular active enforcement of secularism. That may not have happened as much. You know, we may have let things be. You know, we may have looked the other way when something is happening, and we need to keep reminding people that as an Indian, accepting different cultures is a very essence of being Indian.
So can I
Otherwise,
ask,
this country will rip apart.
Because you've dealt with a Hindu-Muslim love story in your book, right? So when this whole bogey of love jihad gets thrown out there,
Yes.
you know,
And mine is reverse apparently.
well, yours is the reverse, and I say love jihad in quotes because I don't think it exists, and I think that it's a terrible term that is used for polarization. But I want your perspective on that. You see, when love jihad is used, when lynchings happen of Muslims, you know, on suspicion of killing cows, etc. How do you, as a concerned citizen, as someone who has not been afraid to express your political opinion, feel about that? Has that contributed to this atmosphere of us not being as secular as we should be?
I think so, because some of these stories have come in the mainstream media, and while no one incident can damage the fabric of India, no one indeed, but each such incident is a little matchstick lit and thrown. Which one will actually ignite a bigger thing, we don't know. But each of these incidents can, you know, can create a certain thing, and that's not good. Like I said, while the government can take the view, fine, we can't react to everything, because that will only encourage, which is also a valid point of view. If the Prime Minister keeps reacting to everybody who does an incident like this, it will encourage 50 more actually. It will not stop.
It would help if his ministers didn't garland lynching.
That was, I don't know where that came from, and I don't know.
That shocked you as well.
Yeah, and I think Jayant Sinha has to explain himself, because he used to be quite, I mean, from what I have known of him, he's quite I've shared the stage with him many times, and he's an ex-McKinsey guy, and what was really going on there, I didn't really understand actually. So, I think, like I said, actively if they have not gone and said, you know, this is India, 50 different types of people live here, we got to stay together. You know, somebody needs to be playing that role.
So when you get trolled for perhaps having a more nuanced view on Narendra Modi today than maybe you did in 2014, because there was a sense at that time that maybe you gushed a lot about the Prime Minister, but so did many other people.
Nobody gushed, but we had to make a decision. Does he deserve a chance or not?
But what would you say to those people today who sort of, you get trolled quite a lot for that. Well, you know, this is what you tweeted about petrol prices back then. Look at our situation today. You know, things like that.
So I've still opposed, I've still written columns on petrol prices being too high. I don't think it's the best policy to have 90 rupees petrol and then use it for some welfare scheme. That is, to me, collecting more taxes, bigger government, which is quite the opposite of what was said. I have said that. What people sometimes say, and I also reflected on it, that you're not as angry. You're not as angry. So I would give 2 points to that. One is, I'm just older. I'm 44 now. I'm just not as angry as
that old.
No, but I mean, you know, you have to mature with age. You can have some anger in you, but you can't be an angry person. So I'm not going to, even if say Rahul was in power today, I would not be as critical of him. Maybe it's like 10 years ago. Just emotionally, I've grown. I don't think shouting helps. But also, I think another thing I've learned is, we always used to say, we must have a stable government. We must have a government with lots of numbers so that things can change, and that I'm not so sure about anymore. We should have a reasonably stable government, so we shouldn't have an unstable government, but it should have a certain vulnerability, because it has happened, it has happened throughout our history that whenever there is too much power in one entity, you know, the first casualty is freedom of expression, media, there is all this self-censorship that starts. So I don't think it's specific to an individual or a party, it's specific to the power that accumulates. It's not a country where too much power should accumulate to one section, one party, one community, one religion.
In other words, you believe it's also important to have a vibrant opposition.
I think, yeah, to me that is obviously because the government is in power and we should judge the government in power more. So we talk about that more. But a lot of the problems are because of there not being a reasonable opposition. In the US, there is Republican, Democrats, there is cut to cut, like everything is like pretty, you know, here it's just not like kabhi Mahagathbandhan ho raha hai, sometimes it's not there, I'm doing my own thing.
What would be your, if there was one disappointment you had to express with Mr. Modi's government today, what would it be? What has disappointed you the most?
I'm more keen on policy which are
Yeah, sure.
if you ask me for
Whatever.
one thing.
Yeah.
So there are many issues, but I think I feel we could have done more to towards growing the economy. While 8%, 7% is not bad, economies like China and all, when they were at our stage, they were growing at 12, 13. As a country which relatively we still have a lower base to grow from, we could have been in double digits because we are kind of at the UPA growth rates, if at
But
best.
then we did demonetization and others too.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever it is, we could have done countermeasures to that. We could have done something to really fire up the economy. And I think still there can be more opportunities for new businesses to crop up. It's still not that easy to do business. It's still not like that
What you had hoped it
minimum
would be.
government, maximum governance, that aspect of letting the market really take over and letting true meritorious capitalism thrive. There is capitalism, but there is still seems to be a lot of crony capitalism. So I don't know, I think maybe I expected more, but that's the one area where I feel.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one last question, Chetan, which is on your writing itself. Now again, you know, we come back to how critics look at you, how readers look at you. You clearly are a very popular writer. Your books have been bestsellers. But then there are those who kind of throw their noses up and say, no, Chetan Bhagat is not a serious writer. So what do you say to them today when they kind of look at you?
I think they are misunderstanding what I'm trying to do. I'm a popular writer. I want to reach everyone. I believe this is one of my major mottos in life. Don't be serious, be sincere. Being serious doesn't show like, you know, how profound you are or how deep you are. You can be funny, you can make a point, but you have to be sincere. And I think somewhere down the line, I'm trying to connect with an India which has never picked up a book. Books were an elite club, English books. There was like a little club, everybody sitting there and sipping their cocktails or whatever. And like 2 days back, you know, we just did some pre-order deliveries for Amazon, and I had to deliver books as a surprise to people who pre-ordered them. And in Mumbai, we went to a slum, like people in Dharavi pre-ordered the book. You know, that has not happened before. That is the book they like. Now, should they not read? Should I not write for them? Should I only write for the people who like the quotes serious books? I think that's something they need to reflect about. I have broken some walls and made literature more accessible to people. It may mean that it's less eloquent. It may mean, but it's not that simple to be simple. It's not simple to do what I'm doing. And I think they can do their thing. I can do my thing. We can all coexist. Let's encourage books. People need to read more rather than they see like all these writers are fighting with each other.
That's a good point.
Yeah, please read serious books. Please read my books. I mean, you know, why get into this?
All right, well, Chetan Bhagat, I have to say I haven't often agreed with you on a lot of political issues over the years, but it's always nice to be at least able to sit across a table and
Yes,
have a
of
civil
course.
conversation. And good luck. The Girl in Room 105, that will be out next week. Thank you, Chetan Bhagat,
Thank
for
you.
joining us. Thank you.